All right, and without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Matt so that we can learn all this awesome stuff he's got for us today.
Thanks, John. And good morning, everybody, and welcome to 5 Things Your Website is Trying to Tell You and You're Not Listening. Just a couple seconds about me. I've been working in digital marketing for over 20 years. And for 10 years, I was engaged by Google to travel the country and teach people Google Ads and Google Analytics. So I've taught thousands of people in person across North America, and I've taught another thousands of people virtually some of the benefits of Google Ads and Google Analytics. Now, there's a couple things I think you can do today to get a little bit more out of today's presentation. Number one, I would suggest if you are using Google Analytics right now, have your Google Analytics account open. Now, this is not a step-by-step how-to program. However, as we go through some of the concepts today, you may be looking at some of the concepts we talk about and go, oh, I kind of know where to find that information. Now, I'm going to have my Google Analytics open. So at the end of today, we're going to do a Q&A session. And if we have time, and if you do have a step-by-step how-to question, we'll try to answer it then. Plus, at the end of the program, we're going to tell you how you can get all of the data that we're going to talk about today without ever opening Google Analytics. The second thing that I would suggest is today, just focus on the concepts, right? We're going to go through a little bit of math, not a lot. I'm a creative guy. I'm not a math guy, but we're going to do a little bit of math, but use this program live is just to embrace the concepts and then use the recording to go through the details. And the third thing that I would suggest, which is going to be a framework for a lot of what we talk about today, is have a sense of how much a new customer is worth to you. Now, when I ask that question of my clients, they all say the same exact thing. And it's probably what's going through your head right now, which is, well, it depends on what we sell them. Well, of course it does. It does for every one of us. But we just closed out the first 6 months of the year. If you took all the revenue you generated in the first 6 months of the year, and you divided it by the number of transactions that created that revenue, could you come up with a number? Right? So we want to come up with a number of how much a sale is worth to you. And that's going to be the underpinning of some of the math we do today. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, just if you have a question, put it in the chat. We're going to do our Q&A at the end. And John's going to go through and he's going to look through the questions, kind of eliminate the duplicates, and he'll sift through them and he'll put them all together for the end. So if you have a question, put that in the chat until we get to the end. Now, one other thing that I'm going to ask you to consider before we jump into it is just consider for just a second how large the influence of your website is, right? Just step back for a minute. Your website talks to future customers, it talks to employees, future employees, it talks to business partners, it talks to vendors. Your website talks to so many people that are critical to your business. It's got a giant sphere of influence. So that's why this program is about, if your website wants to tell you something, you really should listen. Now, one other thing just to keep in mind as you go through the program is that things that get measured get managed. Now, Peter Drucker, the father of American management, this is as true today as when he said it in the 1950s. Just embrace the concept of how beneficial it is to measure things that we want to improve. All right. So we've got those things to think about as we dive into it. We're not going to do the normal webinar engagement things that are so popular today about you putting into the chat where you're from or whether you can remember your high school locker combination. We're going to dispense with all that. We're going to dive right into it because we've got 5 things that we want to tell you that your website's trying to tell you that you are not listening. And the first one is your website is trying to tell you whether or not it's a good salesperson, right? Because that's the central purpose of a website. And what's it there for? It's there to convince people who are considering engaging with your business to actually engage with you. That's its role. If it doesn't contribute to your sales, if it doesn't contribute to your revenue, what's it there for? What's it doing? So how effective is it at convincing people who are considering doing business with you to actually do business with you? Now, in the real world, I think we all think we know what a good salesperson looks like or doesn't look like. But as far as websites being good salespeople, what does that look like? Well, we measure that through something called a key event. And a key event is what you have determined the ultimate goal of your website is. Now, if I asked you right now, if I put a new visitor on your website and everything went perfectly, it's the best experience they could have, what would the desired outcome be? How would it end? For the very best website visit experience, how does it end on your website? So whatever that is, whether they fill out a form, whether they do a phone call, whether they use a widget, watch a video, whatever that is that you've determined, that is your key event, which means then we can measure something called a key event conversion rate, which is the percentage of users that come to the site that do the thing that you want them to do, the ultimate outcome. That's how we determine whether or not your website is a good salesperson or not a good salesperson. Now, if you've had any kind of dabble in Google Analytics so far, you're probably saying to yourself, well, what is this? What is this key event term? Never heard that before. Because 2 months ago, Google decided to change what we previously knew as a conversion to a key event. Same thing. They just changed the name. But in Google Ads, they still call it a conversion. And in some other Google platforms, they still call it a goal. So whether it's referred to as a goal or a conversion or a key event, the definition is still the same. It is the thing that you have designed your website to do. It's the ultimate outcome. Now, again, this varies for each one of you. And when you design a website, you design it from the end forward, meaning you design it around what is the thing you want people to do. And some really common key events are, phone calls, form submissions, purchase, or maybe use a widget. For example, we have a landscape client and they really want people to use their mulch calculator, which helps people calculate how much mulch they need. And if they use that widget, they've got like a 95% probability of then doing business with that vendor. So that's what they want, is they want you to use that widget. But whatever it is for you, that's your key event. And if right now you're on the program, if you're kind of doubting yourself and if you're not really clear on what your ultimate outcome is, then probably it's not clear to the people visiting your website as well. So make your key event determination. What is it that we want to measure? What is the ultimate outcome that drives a contribution to your company? And once you have that measured in GA4, that number jumps out. Like here on the screen, you can see it's 16.61%. So the way to interpret that is 16.6% of the people who come to this website do the thing that the website was designed to get them to do, which in this case is a very high number, right? So that's what your website's trying to tell you. It's trying to tell you, is it a good salesperson or is it not a good salesperson? And it's doing that by this simple number, the user key event conversion rate. Now, at this point, someone's probably getting ready to type into the chat box, well, what is a good key event conversion rate? And you'll find a lot of different answers to this on the internet. In my personal experience, if you're a B2B website, you're selling professional services, it's probably around 2 to 4%. If you're an e-commerce site, it's about 1.5, 2 to 3%. If you're consumer services, somewhere around 4 to 8%. But I can find exceptions to every one of those numbers. And there's a really famous case study that 1-800-Flowers.com did years ago when 1-800-Flowers.com boasted of a key event conversion rate of 47%. Well, let's think about what 1-800-Flowers offers. Flowers. And when you go to 1-800-Flowers.com, what's your state of mind? Probably duress, urgency, right? You're going to get it done. Now, compare that if you like Best Buy, and Best Buy sells appliances and computers and phones and home theater equipment and furniture. Are they ever going to have a 47% conversion rate? No, because they have such a huge variety of people coming to the site for such a different variety of needs and different types of purchasing products. Of course not. So that's why these numbers have to be in context. But what your number is and what the average key conversion rate is is not as important as simply focusing on making it better, getting more juice from the oranges you already have. Most businesses will make more money next week if they focus on increasing their key event conversion rate, getting more from the website visitors they already have than if they focused on getting more website visitors. So that's the challenge with conversion rate, is simply making it better. But let's take a look at, for just a minute, the impact that this can have. And we're going to do a little bit of what we call conversion math. All right, and to do conversion math, you just need three things. Number one, you need that website key event conversion rate that we just talked about. It's a very clear number, easy to get. The second thing is to know your lead to sale conversion rate. If I gave you 100 leads, how many of them would you turn into sales? You've got to be able to track that number. And then the third thing, which again is the hardest, is what is your average transaction value, or some business will express it as an average lifetime value. Now watch as we put these three numbers together, we can demonstrate what a huge impact that conversion math can have on your profitability. So let's just take as an example, a website, a business that has an average transaction lifetime profit of $200. And let's just say that right now they're getting 600 website visitors a month. And their current key event conversion rate is 2%. And they convert 33% of the leads into sales. All right, let's work with that. Those are all reasonable, very conservative numbers. But let's say that business said, you know what, let's focus our time and attention and really trying to increase that conversion rate to 4%. Doesn't sound like a big jump, right? 2% to 4%. But what happens if we do that? Well, those 12 leads per month go to 24 leads per month. They go from 4 sales to 8. They go from $800 a month in profit to $1,600. That's $9,600 increase in profit. And what did we do? Did we go out and buy more visitors? No. All we did was work on the things that we have to work on to increase the conversion rate. So if you've got a website, you got to have like a pit crew that's kind of diving in and making those small incremental tweaks on all the different aspects of the website to get that lift from 2% to 4%. And just like race cars will fight for a tiny incremental increase in speed, that's what we do as business owners. We fight for a tiny incremental lift in conversion rate because that's where the money is. Now, we could do an entire session on conversion rate optimization, but if you had to look at 4 big things that slow down the average business's conversion rate, number 1, it's page design. You know, and we're going to talk in just a few minutes a little bit more about page design and aesthetics, but at the end of the day, it's about, can someone get out of your web page what they need? Now, I doubt there's too many people on the call today that are getting a magazine by subscription. Do you think that's true? Probably very few of you get a magazine anymore, but probably some of you remember getting a magazine. And if you think about magazines, think about how every page was designed separately to make it attractive and engaging and easy to read. But somehow, when we got into the world of websites, we forgot that. We forgot that pages need to be designed to be engaging and entertaining and easy to read. Instead, we just slap a header on a website page, we slap a footer, and then we shove the copy in the middle, and somehow we expect that to work. And in many, many cases, it doesn't. So the second thing is mobile readability. We're going to talk a lot about mobile coming up in just a few minutes. Most businesses will underestimate by a huge degree what percentage of their visitors come from a mobile device. And most website platforms take the desktop version, the big thing, and they just scrunch it and make it small. And it makes for a very poor mobile readability. That's the second biggest thing that affects conversion rate. The third biggest thing is copy that's not written for what the user wants. You can't underestimate the level of specificity that people have when they go to the web, right? I mean, think about it. 8 years ago, if you wanted a used car, you would go to Google and you would search used cars, name of town. Today, people search 2018 Mazda GLC yellow four-door with USB port. Super laser specific. So if you don't deliver what they're looking for, then they leave. They don't convert. So the old days where marketing was about what we want to say, today marketing is about being responsive to what the consumer wants to hear. And if you fail on that, you generally don't get the conversion. And then finally, you still find a lot of websites with technical issues and broken forms. In fact, coming up in just a minute, I'm going to introduce to you a piece of research that just came out 2 weeks ago that I think is really literally going to blow your mind about the status of websites out there today. So first thing your website's trying to tell you, is it a good salesperson? Second thing it's trying to tell you is, hey, here's how to prioritize your time. And when I work with as many owner operators, right, people that own the business and they're also involved in it, they try to operate it. The thing they tell me the most is they're frustrated about time. They just don't have enough time to do all the things they have to. And they don't know, should they be doing the social media thing? Should they be doing organic? Should they be doing Google ads? You know, what all that. And if you try to do all of that stuff, generally you're going to fail, right? Generally, we found that if you try to be all things to everybody, you end up being nothing to everyone. And so let's go back to that key event conversion rate chart that we showed earlier, because we zoomed in on that 16.6%, but now look below it and you can see that that 16.6% is an average. And it's made up of different conversion rates from different channels. And for this business, you can see that their Google CPC at the top there, CPC stands for cost per click, their Google ads converts at 18.82%. And drop your eyes down just a little bit and look at organic, about 13%. And the traffic they get from their Google My Business profile, local search, when somebody typically uses a city name in the search, about 15%. Well, not a lot of companies have the time and the budget to succeed at all these different channels. So if you got to pick and choose, I think of this particular business, as long as the math worked out, then I think they should be well deserved to say, you know what, let's put our time and energy and see how we can make Google ads more efficient, because, right, we're sailing with the wind. We drop down to organic, which is unpredictable, hard to do, ever changing, and it's about to change more than we've ever seen it change ever. Maybe that's just not a best use of our time right now. So your website will tell you where you should put your time. And again, it's not the same for every business. Look at this business, which has, and by the way, this data is actual data, and all the data that I'm sharing with you today is actual real world data. This business has a longer sales cycle. It's a much higher ticket item. And here you can see that their organic traffic converts at much higher than their paid traffic, which sometimes for products that are high ticket and have a long sales cycle, they're very deliberative, like a swimming pool, for example, a residential elevator is a company that we work with. You just don't decide on a whim to put a residential elevator in your house. So for those kind of products, people do a lot of research. And so therefore, in general, organic can be a more valuable channel for them. The takeaway, though, is that you have to know your own priorities. And if you listen to it, your website will tell you where you should be spending your time. The third thing your website's trying to tell you is whether or not you're making a good first impression. We all know the value of making a good first impression. What's the old saying, right? You never get a second chance to make a good first impression. And that's not only true with people, it's true online. In fact, it's kind of worse online. You know, a lot of social research has shown that it takes humans about a tenth of a second to form an opinion about another human being. Pretty amazing, right? But I don't think you would deny it. Additional research has shown that it takes people half of that, 5/100ths of a second, to draw a conclusion about your website. You know, when you really dive into some of the research that's been done about website usability, et cetera, what you walk away with is that we are basically a large group of very shallow, superficial users. But that makes sense, right? Because if you think about your grocery store, you go to the typical grocery store, and more than half of the products in a grocery store, the packaging costs more than the product itself, right? For half of the products in a grocery store, they spend more on the packaging than they do to make the product itself, right? Right in line with what you're looking at on your screen. We're very superficial, visually superficial people. And that, if you understand this concept, now you're going to understand why I think that most people who design websites design them right. You see, I think most people that design websites believe consciously or subconsciously that the average user is going to just lumber up, sit down, take a deep breath, grab a cup of coffee, and read every word on that website and try to memorize it. I think that's what most people who design websites believe. I think they believe that users are going to come to the site calm, relaxed, methodical, and read every word. But that's not how it is at all, is it? You know, we're not elephants, we're squirrels, right? I mean, if you look at usability research and mouse mapping, and the thing that you see is a person comes to the site and they jump to a photo, and then they jump down to a subhead below, and then they jump back up to a navigation element, then they jump below down to another photo, then they jump back up to another navigation element, then they jump down to it. If you look at mouse mapping, it looks like you're looking at a seismograph because they're just going up and down and great. They're frenetic, they're crazy. That's how people use websites. But we don't design for those people. We design for these people. And that's why a lot of websites fail. Now, I want to show you two websites, and John's going to get a poll together for just a minute. But in the next few minutes, I want you to look at the screen very closely, and I want you to pretend that you are researching a catering company, because you have to find a catering company for a company event that you're putting on. Okay? So I'm going to show you two websites, and I'm going to give you about the amount of time that the average person would spend on those sites. And I want you to look at them. Is everybody ready? Okay. So the first website that you come to in your Google search is this one. And then you went to this one. Okay. John's going to put up a quick poll here, and I'm interested to know which one do you think you would spend more time engaging with? Very quickly. Not asking which one you would buy from, but which one do you think you would gravitate to and spend more time engaging with, website A or website B? All right, poll should be on your screen. Take a minute. What do you think, John? Are people answering? Very good. Just to be protective of everyone's time, what are the early results, John?
Right now, we 73% prefer website B.
All right. Let's go back to website A for just a second. I'm just going to make three quick comments and we move on. First of all, if anybody in the program today is in the food business in any way, if you're in the food business, there's a rule. Food photographs have to be flawless, right? There is no other standard than that. Flawless is your only standard. Now, I don't know what this is, whether this is fried chicken or dumplings or 3-day-old meatballs. I'm not really sure, but that photograph cannot be on any food website, period. Second thing, look at the call to action in the middle of the screen. All right, if the dominant call to action on your website is call, I want you to know that there are entire generations of potential consumers who the last thing that they would do is ever call you. They're never going to call you. Not going to happen. You know, I was calling my daughter the other day. She's a millennial, and she didn't have her outgoing voicemail set up on her phone. You know, I got the normal one that you get with the service, and I said, Katie, you didn't set up your voicemail on your phone. And she said, she looked at me like I was like an idiot. She's like, Dad, if anybody wants me, they're just going to text me. No one's going to call me. And that's the mentality that these generations have. They are not going to pick up the phone and call you. So if you've got a digital strategy that is based on getting people to call you, you just got to accept the fact that there's a whole generations of potential consumers that are not going to do that. Final thought. What you see on the screen here is called a viewport. It is what is seen in the initial screen size, in this case, desktop, of course, right? That is a viewport. And if I scroll down, then I would get to another viewport. So anything you put in the top of the viewport here, first viewport, because again, most people don't scroll, is going to be the most valuable real estate. This is it, right? This is singularly the most valuable real estate on the website. And so if we put all the greatest minds together, and the best thing we can tell people to do business with us is that we're open and that we're ready to help, if that's it, if that's the single unifying value attribute that we're going to communicate, we probably are not going to get too far, right? So this viewport has to be the sell, has to make the big promise, has to come through with something clear that someone's going to say, oh, okay, I should dive in a little bit further, right? So you're getting it. You see how first impressions matter. And you heard this from your mom. I'm sure at one time your mom said, hey, don't judge a book by its cover. And we all nodded. And from that point on, we've been lying to our mothers because we do judge books by the cover. And when it comes to websites, we measure how much people are judging our cover by two factors. One, the bounce rate and the scroll rate. Bounce rate, scroll rate. Now, a bounce, think about a bounce like a trampoline. If somebody comes to the trampoline, they hit it and they bounce right off, they didn't engage with the website in any other way. They came and they hit it and they bounced off without doing anything else. That's a bounce. And in general, bounces are not good. And a scroll rate, as defined by Google, are people that got to the 90% point in the depth of the page. Well, that's good, right? If somebody got to the 90% point, that's really good. They're interested. You've written good copy. You've laid it out well. Conversely, if not a lot of people got to, our scrolled users got to that's not too good. So let's take a look. And again, this is real data. And in this case, this is a page on a website that was designed to appeal to a very specific group of people. In this case, it was people in the Villages in Florida. The Villages is a retirement community, soon to be a retirement continent with as fast as it's growing. But the page was designed to appeal to them. And if you look closely here, you can see that the bounce rate is 83.36%. On any level, that's not good. So the website's telling us, hey, we're not creating a great first impression here on this particular page. And remember, for a lot of websites, people don't come into the homepage anymore. People come in through an interior page. And if we look at the scroll rate of that page, right, you can see it's less than 10% of the people that scroll. Now, let's go down to this page here, which is the main organic selling page, the Orlando Area Builder on row 4 here. And you can see that the bounce rate is much lower and about a third of the users scrolled. And let's go down here. These two pages are generally comprised of photographs. And I'll submit to you today that we are a very visual society. We are, I think, just a few steps away from going back to hieroglyphics. So the more that you can communicate with images, the better. These two pages are predominantly images, and look what happens. Very low bounce rate, and just more than half of the people scrolled all the way to the bottom. So whatever you can communicate with pictures, communicate with pictures. Now let's look at this. And the point I want to make here with this data is that both bounce rate and scroll rate have to be looked at in context of what the page is trying to do. So this is an air conditioning company, and they have a page for air conditioning repair. This is very recent data. As you can imagine, if your air conditioning was broken, you have some level of urgency to get this done. So this page does have a low bounce rate, probably because they fill out the form right away, or they call, they engage right away. But notice that they don't scroll, right? They're like, okay, you can fix it, got it. I'm going to move on. I'm going to get it done. And if we go down to the installation page, which is a far more expensive and much more deliberative process to install a new air conditioner, you can see they're very thoughtful, very low bounce rate, and you can see that more than half the people scroll all the way to the bottom. So if we didn't know the context of this page, we would say that the low scroll rate would be a negative, but it just knowing the context means it's kind of okay, right? So first impressions can be measured by bounce rate and scroll rate. So what are some causes of some bad first impressions? You know, very quickly, the first one, believe it or not, is still load time. The average business website in the United States loads in 5 seconds. Are you hanging around for 5 seconds for a page to load? Probably not. And you can't judge how quickly your site loads by your use of it because your device has cached or remembered portions. You have to use a third party. Google recommends that your site load in less than 2 seconds, less than 2. So slow load time kills a lot of websites. Again, hard to read layout. People are not going to devote their entire lives to trying to figure out what's on that page. If they can't read it easy, look at some websites now as you've gone through today's program. Step back, fonts too small, line spacing too close together. Just it's too hard to read. You know, in self-serving copy, remember that today people go to the web to solve a problem. They go to the web to scratch an itch. And still today, you see some web pages that lead off with, hey, we've been around for 30 years. Our leadership has 100 years of experience. Our values are honesty, none of which helps the user solve a problem. You really have to understand what the user is trying to solve and write to what the problem is that they're trying to solve. And again, we've talked about it. Aesthetics matter, looks matter, how attractive is the page, and then overly general copy. I want to share with you a story that just happened to me not too long ago. I was meeting with an architect and I said to him, hey, you know, for your website, you're going to need a page about architecture for restaurants and a separate page for architecture for banks and a separate page about architecture for schools. And he looked at me and he said, man, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. It's all done by the same people. It's all architecture, whether it's a bank, a school, a restaurant, it doesn't matter. It does matter. It matters to who? The searcher. If the searcher is going to look for an architect for banks, you know what they want to see? They want to see a page about architecture for banks. And if they search architect for restaurant, you know what they want to see? They want to see about architecture for restaurants. It's not about what you want to say. It's about what people want to hear. So understand what they're looking for and write to what they are looking for. You cannot underestimate the specificity that people have on the web today. People believe that no matter how esoteric something is, they can find it. And if they don't find it, they're just going to do another search. I'm going to jump off track here for just a second because this just came out 2 weeks ago and I thought it was so compelling. I had to share it with you today. This is research done by a product called Lead Inferno, and Lead Inferno is a widget that helps you put texting on your website so that people can text. And what they did is they mystery shopped 275 different businesses, mostly home services, elective medical, little legal, and some manufacturing. And when I say mystery shopped, what I mean is they went to these websites and acted like they were interested in whatever was being offered, filled out the form. They made sure that when they filled out a form, they did it consistently. Every single time they did it, the methodology is very strong. So 275 websites they did this to. And the first thing they found is that 5% of all website forms were broken. Wow. That's a lead killer, right? 5% of all lead forms were broken. So if you haven't done it lately, you know, trial run your website forms. And so if somebody does want to do business with you, let's make sure you can get it. And 84% of the website forms didn't send an auto reply. 84%. So what happens on the consumer side, if you don't send both a confirmation page, thank you very much for your submission, we're going to route it to the right person and we're going to make sure that it gets in their hands and we're going to make sure we get back to you in less than 2 hours, and a thank you email, then that person is not convinced that it went through. So then what do? They go on to somebody else. Now they're going to go on to somebody else anyway, but if they don't get that auto reply, that auto thank you, they're going to go on to somebody else with a whole lot more conviction because they don't think that your lead got through. 84% of 275 companies did not deliver a thank you page and a thank you email, not managing expectations for the person who filled out the form. Now, the average response time, and this is amazing, to a form submission, 275 websites, was 17 hours and 49 minutes. Now, you can go online and find a lot of great research about what's the number one factor that determines whether a website lead will become a sale. And the number one factor is time. time to respond. He who gets to the prospect fastest wins. In fact, with some social media leads, the lead quality will degrade after 5 minutes, meaning that the propensity for the lead to turn into a sale reduces starting at 5 minutes. And if the average time was 17 hours and 49 minutes, you can imagine how cold those leads became and how low the likelihood was that they turned into sales. You know, here at Roar, if somebody fills out a form on a weekend, we're going to call you. We're going to get back to you. I mean, they're just that important. And even people shouldn't expect to wait to business hours, but we know that the older the lead is, the less likely it is. Now, here's the final piece of statistic that came from this research, and I hope you're sitting down. 42% of all form submissions went unanswered. Wow. What's the purpose of having a website? If when people want to do business with you, they fill it out and nobody answers them. Now, is that because there was a breakdown in how the website works or a breakdown within the company? Who knows? But 42% went unanswered. Make sure all of your forms are getting answered and make sure they're getting answered really quickly. All right, needed to share that with you because that's really compelling research. But let's get back on track here, because the fourth thing that your website's trying to tell you, it's just trying to tell you who likes you best. Not everybody responds the same to your messaging. You know, and that's pretty easy to find too. And again, this is actual data. Everything I share with you today is actual data. Look at the difference here between how men respond to this website and women. Now, it's not saying that women don't ever respond, but if we have a limited amount of money, don't we want to spend the money where it goes the furthest, right? And so the same thing with age, right? And this is a pest control company. And look at the difference here between the 18-24s, the 65 pluses at the bottom. Now, this is pretty clear. This company doesn't make it easy for you to call from the website, and doesn't make it easy for you to text from the website. What 18 to 24s want to do? They want to text. What 65 pluses want to do? They want to call. So you've kind of discouraged these two groups from really responding from you. And that's okay if that's your strategy, but perhaps we shouldn't be spending on money trying to get them if we're not setting up an environment that's conducive for them to react with us. Now, these may seem like trivial numbers to you, but let's look at this in real world terms. So this is actual data. So this is that company that had the 16.4% conversion rate from men and the lower conversion rate from women. And this is paid traffic, right? So with our paid traffic, whether it's Meta or whether it's Google Ads, you know, we can shift the dollars. We can prioritize by gender. We can move money around. We can't ever do anything about the unknowns. But let's just say this is what you see on the screen right now is the reality. And then we said, we're going to listen to our website. Our website's telling us that men are a little bit more responsive. So let's shift the money around. Let's see if we can get more male visitors at the expense of female visitors. And if we do that, we're still going to get our 1,000 visits. That's the same. But look what happens, though, because of this higher conversion rate, instead of getting 5 leads from men, I get 41. And sure, I got fewer leads from women, but look at my net at the bottom. Instead of getting 103 leads, I got 115. It's a 12% increase in leads. And what did we do? Did we spend more money? No. Did we do different ads? No. So how many of you in the program today want to go to your boss, if you have one, or anybody else, say, hey, you know, would you be interested in 12% increase in leads? Yeah. So just listen to your website and they're going to tell you who likes you best. All right, we're down to the final one. Number 5, your website's trying to tell you, and even though it's 2024, your website's still trying to tell you that you just don't look good on a phone. And again, this is actual data here. And even though it's 2024, we started talking about mobile usage and mobile usability back in 2017. Still a lot of businesses haven't gotten the message. Look at the difference in the conversion rate here. Okay, that's interesting. But what's really interesting is look at the difference in the visitors. Wow. I mean, if we can make this 0.28%, if we can lift that to 0.5, look at our potential of what we can do here. Most businesses will underestimate to a great degree how much of their traffic comes from mobile visitors, right? And so focusing on the mobile experience really has a direct payoff in terms of leads. And again, we can do a whole program on mobile usability, but I'd say if there's 3 tips that you want to write down quickly to have offer a better mobile experience, is you may have to concede and just use shorter forms on mobile. And see, this is tough because most websites have made no customizations on mobile. They've just taken the thing that appears on desktop and just made it smaller. But on mobile, maybe you have to ask for name instead of first name, last name, because people aren't really fond of typing on mobile. So the more you make them type, the more likely you are to lose them. People would prefer to text on mobile. See if you can offer that ability. Second hint would be always follow the 3-sentence rule. No more than 3 sentences in copy without a paragraph break, period. Because of that block of copy that you look at on your desktop version, you go, oh, that looks nice. And then when it goes on a mobile screen, it squishes down and it becomes a wall of words that's hard to read. No more than 3 sentences without a paragraph break. Can't do it. And then use subheads. You do it. You scroll, right? Just imagine yourself. You're scrolling up and down, up and down. And when you use subheads, you're creating ladders, like rungs on a ladder that people can move quickly up and down their page and get meaning out of it. If you force people to read a bunch of words to get meaning as they're scrolling, it's not going to be as effective as if you give them subheads like rungs on a ladder to go up, 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 up. And then if they want to go back down, up, 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 up. That's how they use it. The other challenging thing today about mobile is that the line between an app and a mobile website for several generations has blurred. Right? So if you're of a certain age, you don't really distinguish anymore between an app that you like and a company's mobile website. What you expect from an app is what you expect from a mobile website. Like you don't go, oh, I know why this is bad because it's a mobile website. It's not an app. That's not how people think. They expect to glide effortlessly through your company's mobile version of your site in the same way they glide through all of the apps that they use every single day. It's the apps that people use that set the standard for their expectations for your website on a mobile device. Now, if you had to remember one big thing about mobile, it's pretty easy. Just remember that people are navigating your website on a phone with ease. Now take a minute, look at your thumbs. Look at them. Do they look like precise navigational instruments to you? No. I mean, is it any wonder why people fumble on the mobile version of your website? Because they're not using this. They don't have that dexterity. So if you haven't put in the different amount of spaces and made sure the form fields are further apart, no wonder their thumbs trip over things. They just don't have the dexterity that they have on the desktop version. All right, we're wrapping it up, 43 minutes into it, and let's go over what your website's trying to tell you. Look at this gentleman's all happy now because he's listened to his website, and your website is trying to tell you whether it's a good salesperson or not. Easy number to get to, and you measure that by your user key conversion rate. It's trying to tell you how to prioritize your time. You can't win all channels. Most people don't have the budget to win all channels. Now, if you do have the budget to win all channels, please reach out to me after the program. Your website will tell you if you're making a good first impression. Your website will tell you who likes you most. Again, every website has a pattern. Don't try to be everything to everybody. And finally, do you look good on mobile? A couple bonus tips I want to leave you with today. One is sample size is everything. So as you're looking at data, make sure that you're looking at a statistically reliable sample size. Look at the date range. And if you're not using Google Search Console is singularly, without question, the best free digital marketing tool out there today. It allows you to get kind of an x-ray of your website. It'll tell you what pages Google thinks you have. It'll tell you if you have any viruses on your website. It'll actually show you the exact combination of words that people use to expose your website in Google search, whether you get the click or not. It's really the best consumer research you can get, period. And it's absolutely 100% free, and every business should be using it. And finally, just a reminder, I'm going to assume that everybody has switched over from Universal Analytics to GA4, which is the latest version of Google Analytics. And they said that Universal Analytics data, your old data, was going away July 1st, still there for most of our clients. But if you're relying on it, and if you think, oh, I'll just go look for that and check on that, it is going to go away, just as a reminder on that. All right, now I've got a way for you to get all of that data for free without ever going into Google Analytics, because thanks to the nice folks at the SBDC, they're offering you this Google Looker dashboard tool for free. And so we'll set it up, and here you can see, we'll go to page 1 here. And if we look at it, it has everything we've talked about today all in one nice, easy package. Here's your user key event rate. You can see it graphs the improvement over the previous year, and that's the holy grail, right? Just to get better in our user key event rate. And if you don't measure it, you don't manage it. So we're going to measure it, we're going to manage it, and we're going to stay continually focused on improving it. And there it is, one easy snapshot right there. And here's our key event rate by device type, mobile and desktop and tablet. Here's our key event rate by channel that we talked about, right? How do you prioritize your time? And here's that data right here in the table form. And we also talked about in today's program, your key event rate by gender. It's right there for you. And here's your key event rate by age range. It's all here, and also by city if you want that. And here's your landing page data as well, as making a good first impression. So all of the data that we talked about in today's program, you just do nothing. You just look at this chart. All you have to do is change the date range right there. This is live online, and you just keep this bookmarked. You'll never have to go into Google Analytics. It can't be any easier. So all that you have to do to be able to get that Looker report from the folks at the SBDC is simply email us at info@roarontheweb.com. Now, you got to have a couple things in place in order to get that to happen for free. You've got to have GA4 installed. You've got to have access to your GA4 account and be able to grant permission for another user and have key events set up. If you've got those 3 things right there, you email info@roarontheweb.com. Tell us your name, your website address, name of business. We'll take care of the rest. Next thing will happen is you'll get a link, and you'll get that report, which, as long as nothing changes, will serve you for an awfully long time. Get all the data that we talked about today, one easy place, never having to go into Google Analytics, absolutely no charge to you. All right, John, I think we're doing well on time. I'm showing about 10 minutes left. Is that what you show? And I think we have about 10 minutes for questions.
Yep. And we do have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is from Melissa. She asks, can you only see the conversion number if your website is incorporated with a commerce tool? Her example was that they have an operating system that redirects users to another URL to purchase products. And she asks if Google Analytics isn't going to capture that?
No, you don't need that. Any website, whether it's e-commerce or not, can measure their key events.
All right. And then Ryan asked, he said the relationship between Google Ads, GA4, and Google Tags, it seems very complex and confusing. And he asks if there are any resources that you recommend that provide comprehensive training on how to navigate and understand the ecosystem.
Now, Ryan, I agree with you. It is complex. GA4 relies on Google Tag Manager in a way that Universal Analytics didn't. And so to really get the full breadth of what you can get out of GA4, you do need to have a Google Tag Manager account. Google Tag Manager is a little bit like having a medication port. If you went to the hospital and they put a port in your body and then all the medications flow through that, rather than having individual ones. So once you set up Google Tag Manager, it in theory makes it easier to set up tags code for any other platform that then is automatically transferred into GA4. In terms of resources, I would suggest two. You would go to, I forget the URL, but if you Google Skillshop, you'll see all of Google's classes on each one of those. So Google the phrase, Google Skillshop, and they have really good defined learning about all three topics: Google Ads, Google Tag Manager, and GA4. The other thing, if you're a visual learner, then each one of those has their own YouTube channel. Just be very carefully look for the ones from Google, because a lot of people masquerade as being from Google when they're not really from Google. So there is an official YouTube channel by Google Ads, official YouTube channel for Google Analytics, and an official YouTube channel for Google Tag Manager.
All right. And then Diamond said, I use Webador for my website. Is this a good platform to use?
I've never heard of it.
Let's see. Besides omitting first and last names, and this is from Sabrina, what other tips to share do you have to share to get visitors to fill out a form on the website?
Yeah, I would say three. Look for any other opportunities to shorten the form. For example, number one is, I still see people ask for city, state, and zip code. But if I have your zip code, I have your city and state. And if I have your city and state, I have your zip code. So I don't need to ask for all three of those things. So that's number one. Look for what forms you're asking that you really need. Number two, put social proof around the form. So even great forms, really, really good forms, have somewhere between like a 90% and 85% abandonment rate. So somebody clicks to go to the form, says, yeah, I'm interested, looks at the form and decides not to go forward. Why? Well, they get jittery, they get nervous. So the more that you can put on that form around it to affirm that they're doing the right thing, and social proof is really one of the big parts of that. Third, make sure that the button lines up with what it is that they're trying to achieve. I still see a lot of websites out there with submit. Well, users didn't really come to a forum to submit. They came to a forum to get a quote, request an appointment, download a catalog, and it sounds trivial, but the more the button lines up with what the user is trying to do in their mind's eye, the more likely they are to submit the form.
Right. And then let's see, Ryan also asked, working on a website overhaul, do I lose all my historical data when I publish the new site on my current domain?
So not only are you publishing a new website, but you're publishing it on a new domain.
Seems like he's publishing it on the current domain.
On the current domain, then yeah. No. As long as you use the same Google Tag Manager container, or if you're not using Google Tag Manager, as long as you use the same Google GA4 code, no, your historical data should remain intact. Done correctly, you should absolutely not lose any data.
And Sally asked, if advertising on Facebook, should the website link be included?
Well, two schools of thoughts on that, Sally. That's not a simple question. If you use the meta form itself, you're going to get way more people to do it, like times 30, right? Huge, because when you use the meta form, it auto-populates your name and your email address, because Meta knows all that stuff about you. And basically, all you have to do is say, yeah, I agree with this. So low friction for the user. People are very likely to fill out that form. Downside is, without that level of conviction, right? They have no skin in the game. They didn't type anything. Those leads don't convert very well. They're generally an inferior quality. If you do drive people to your website, make sure, of course, that the offer or the words match up with whatever was on the meta ad. They're going to convert. They're going to fill out the form at a way lower rate, but they're generally going to convert to a sale at a way higher rate. So the math then comes into play, right? Because the meta leads are going to be way less expensive, but they convert so low. Where does that leave you at the end of the day on a cost per lead? drive them to the website. You're going to get a lower number of people that fill out the form, but they may convert higher. So you're going to have to follow the math very carefully.
And Ryan asks, are you available for one-on-one consulting for further guidance and analysis? He'd like to get an audit of his website.
We do offer consulting for sure, and you can also email at info@roarontheweb.com.
And Lene asks, what are good website hosts? Which ones would you recommend for a retail platform? For example, in a Walmart form of hosting family clothing, appliances, etc.
Is it Renee?
Lene.
Lene. Lene, I'm not sure if you're asking what is a good platform to build the website on, or what is a good platform to host it on once you build it. So I'm going to assume that you're asking what's a good platform to build it on.
Yeah, and she just said yes, sir, build the website.
Okay. There's a couple of them. I think it kind of comes down to this judgment, whether you want to lease it or whether you want to own it. So Shopify is a great SaaS-based platform. You pay a monthly fee, you set it up, and in that monthly fee, you get access to all this technology. But at the end of the day, you don't own anything. Shopify goes away, you go away. WooCommerce is a great, proven e-commerce platform with lots of functionality and lots of great stuff in it. And you build it and you own it. It's not a monthly fee, but if something happened to your hosting provider, you just pick it up and you move it to another hosting provider. So I would say if you're trying to do a trial concept right now, like, hey, I just want to get this store up and I want to see if my idea is going to work, I'd probably incline to go the Shopify route because I can get a site up, literally in 2 weeks, really, on there. And I'm paying a monthly fee. It's easy. It's simple. There's a lot less to think about. But a lot of people will say, okay, after a year, we've proven this is a viable concept. I don't want to be beholden to Shopify. So I'm going to look at how I can own this asset and maybe migrate it to something like a WooCommerce. So the decision really comes down at that first level. Do I want to be a lease or do I want to own it? And I think sometimes to trial the concept, it's better to lease it, just get it up.
And Ryan asks, what resources do you recommend in the tools department and what metrics should we be checking? He lists 9 websites, or I think that was just type website speed, SEO optimization, etc.
Well, there's a couple of good website speed tools on the internet, and if you Google website speed tools, particularly mobile tools, you'll find one. Google just sunsetted their tool, which I'm not really sure why. We're a big Ahrefs fan right now. I know a lot of companies use Moz. I think the 2 big tools in the industry right now are Moz and Ahrefs. And to be honest with you, we kind of rotate because it seems like every couple months somebody comes out with a new cool feature. And so we don't want to stay locked into anything. We always want to have the best. But right now we're deep into Ahrefs, which allows us to do the best diagnostics on where a site ranks, why it's not ranking potentially, what are the competitors doing to rank? Because organic rank is a competitive game. You're going to beat somebody ultimately. So you have to know how they got there to really understand what you have to do to beat them. If you don't understand how the people in front of you are there, then you're really just kind of guessing. So you'll save a lot of time and money if you understand why the people in front of you are there. And then you have to kind of adopt your strategy on why they are in front of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you say that the speed tool website one more time?
I don't have a particular one that I use, but if you Google mobile speed test and look for one that pings it from multiple locations, and then you'll get a couple good tools out there.
All right. And that looks like all of our questions today. I don't see any more that we haven't answered. So did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Just a reminder to get your free tool from the SBDC, your free Looker report. Again, email info@roarontheweb. If you meet these conditions on the screen, we'll get it right back to you.
All right, and just a reminder to everybody, you will be getting a survey in your email within the next hour or so, just asking you about today's webinar. Please fill that out. We live by our surveys here at the SBDC, and it helps us, know what kind of webinars to offer in the future and how we're doing. So, we appreciate it if you it's a very short survey. If you take that, it means a lot to us. And we do want to thank Matt for hosting this webinar with us. And we will be sending out a recording of this webinar within the next day or so.